It's just for tax purposes, Tom continued, his tone softening as he noticed my hesitation. You're always talking about being smart with our finances. This is the best move for our family. He reached across the counter and took my hand, but something about his touch felt different. Maybe it was the way his fingers didn't quite wrap around mine like they used to, or maybe it was the slight tremor I detected in his voice. I stood there in our kitchen, staring at the papers he'd just slid across our granite countertop, my heart pounding against my chest. The house transfer documents seemed to mock me, their official letterhead stark against the white surface. The twins were finally asleep upstairs after a long day, and here I was, facing what felt like an ultimatum from my husband of 4 years. My name is Caitlin Wilson, I'm 38 years old, and I'm a physician at Houston Methodist Hospital. I bought this beautiful Victorian house in the Heights neighborhood 2 years before I met Tom, using savings from my residency years and a lot of careful planning. Now, standing in my dream kitchen that I'd renovated myself, I was being pressured to sign away my biggest investment. If you really cared about our marriage, you'd understand why this makes sense, Tom said, pushing the papers closer to me. Between your crazy hospital hours and your constant exhaustion, I'm the one keeping this family together. His words stung, but something in his tone made me pause. There was an edge to it I'd never heard before. I glanced at the baby monitor on the counter, watching our twins, Emma and Ethan, sleeping peacefully in their cribs. At 2 years old, they were the spitting image of me. Same dark curls and olive skin. They were also the reason I pulled double shifts at the hospital, wanting to ensure they'd have every opportunity in life. Tom had never seemed to understand that my dedication to my career wasn't about ambition. It was about providing for our children's future. I don't know, Tom, I said, pulling my hand away. This house, it's my security. I bought it before we were married. As the words left my mouth, I saw something flash across his face. Was it anger? Frustration? Whatever it was, it disappeared quickly, replaced by what seemed like practiced concern. That night, as I lay awake in bed, his words kept echoing in my mind. But something else was echoing too, a quiet voice of warning that I couldn't quite silence. The next morning, as I was getting ready for my shift at the hospital, something about Tom's behavior nagged at me. He'd been different lately, more distant, spending extra hours at his marketing firm, constantly checking his phone. I'd brushed it off as work stress, but now, combined with this sudden push about the house, my medical instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. I dropped your jacket off at the dry cleaners, Tom said as I rushed around the kitchen, trying to pack the twins' daycare bags while scarfing down a piece of toast. You can thank me later. His smile seemed forced, and he barely looked up from his phone. Just 6 months ago, he would have been helping me with the twins' bags, making sure I ate a proper breakfast before my shift. I watched him as I strapped Emma and Ethan into their car seats. There was a spring in his step that hadn't been there in years, and he'd started going to the gym again. Small changes that seemed innocent enough on their own, but together painted a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. At work, between patients, I called my friend Nina, who worked in real estate law. Something feels off, I told her, ducking into an empty exam room. He's pushing hard for this transfer, saying it's for tax purposes, but... Tax purposes? Nina interrupted. Caitlin, transferring the house to his name alone wouldn't give you any tax benefits. If anything, it would complicate things since you bought it before marriage. My blood ran cold. I'd been so busy with work and the twins that I hadn't done my due diligence. Tom had counted on that, hadn't he? Listen to me carefully, Nina continued, her voice serious. Don't sign anything. I don't want to alarm you, but I've seen this before. Men don't usually push for property transfers unless they're planning something. That afternoon, during a brief break between patients, I did something I'd never done before. I checked our phone records. Tom had been making frequent calls to the same number for months. My hands trembled as I did a reverse lookup, and a name appeared. Destiny Martinez. A quick social media search revealed a beautiful woman in her mid-20s, whose check-ins matched Tom's late nights at work. My stomach churned as I scrolled through her photos, stopping at one from 2 weeks ago. She was at a real estate office, captioned, "Big changes coming." New chapter, blessed. I closed my office door and sat in silence, my mind racing. Years of medical training had taught me to trust my instincts when something felt wrong. Now those same instincts were telling me I needed to protect myself and my children. That evening, I left work early for the first time in months. Instead of picking up the twins from daycare, I drove straight to a discreet electronics store Nina had recommended. The elderly man behind the counter barely blinked when I explained what I needed: a high-quality recording device small enough to hide in my kitchen. "Protect yourself," he said quietly as he showed me how to operate it. "The best evidence is in their own words." I got home before Tom, setting up the device and starting dinner like it was any other night. When he walked in, he seemed surprised to see me there. "No emergencies at the hospital today?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "I thought we could talk more about the house transfer," I said, stirring the pasta sauce. "I've been thinking about what you said." I watched his reflection in the kitchen window as his face lit up with poorly concealed triumph. "I knew you'd come around," he said, coming up behind me. "You're making the right choice, Kate. This is what's best for our family." The way he emphasized family made my skin crawl. Over dinner, I let him talk, recording every word as he explained his elaborate plan for how the transfer would benefit us. Each lie was careful, calculated, and I realized with a sickening clarity that he'd been planning this for months. After putting the twins to bed, I sat in their dim nursery, watching them sleep. Emma clutched her favorite stuffed giraffe while Ethan had kicked off his blanket as usual. Looking at their peaceful faces, I felt a surge of protective rage. Whatever game Tom was playing, he hadn't counted on a mother's instinct to protect her cubs. The next few days were a blur of careful preparation. I took Nina's advice and made copies of all our financial documents, secured new credit cards in my name only, and started transferring my portion of our savings to a separate account. Each night I'd lie awake next to Tom, listening to his steady breathing and wondering when exactly my husband had become a stranger. A week later, Tom brought home the final transfer papers, already signed by him. "Just your signature," he said, sliding them across the counter, the same spot where this had all started. "Then we can put this all behind us." I picked up the pen, my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Tom watched intently as I held the pen over the signature line. In that moment, I saw everything so clearly. His impatience, his barely concealed excitement, the way he kept glancing at his phone as if expecting a message. "Actually," I said, putting the pen down, "I think we need to talk about Destiny first." The color drained from his face so fast I almost laughed. But this wasn't funny. This was the beginning of a war, and I was armed with evidence, determination, and a mother's fury. "What are you talking about?" Tom sputtered, but his face had already given him away. His practiced composure crumbled as he reached instinctively for his phone. "Who is Destiny?" I pulled out my own phone, scrolling through the screenshots I'd carefully collected. "Destiny Martinez, 26 years old, works at your firm. You've been having lunch with her at Lorenzo's 3 times a week for the past 4 months. The same restaurant where you proposed to me, by the way. Nice touch." Tom's expression shifted from shock to anger. "You've been spying on me?" "Protecting myself," I corrected, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Just like you've been protecting our tax situation with this house transfer, right?" He sat down heavily on one of the kitchen stools, running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd once found endearing. "It's not what you think?" "Really?" "Because I think you're trying to steal my house to move in your girlfriend." I played the recording from earlier that week, his voice filling the kitchen as he assured Destiny that everything was going according to plan, and they'd be together soon. The twins' monitor crackled with Emma's soft whimpers. Tom glanced upstairs, and for a moment, I saw guilt flash across his face. But it wasn't guilt about betraying his family. It was guilt about getting caught. "You don't understand," he started, his tone shifting to the placating one he used with difficult clients. Things between us haven't been right for a long time. You're always at the hospital, the twins barely know you. Don't you dare! I cut him off, my voice low but sharp. Don't you dare use our children to justify this. I work to give them a future. What's your excuse for destroying their present? He stood up suddenly, his face flushing with anger. You think you're so clever, don't you? The brilliant doctor, always one step ahead. But you have no idea what it's like living in your shadow, being the guy who married up. Destiny appreciates me. She understands that you're trying to steal my house? I interrupted. The house I bought before I met you? The house where our children took their first steps? Our lawyer said, your lawyer, I corrected. The one you've been meeting with behind my back. Nina warned me about him. He has quite a reputation for helping husbands hide assets during divorces. Tom's face went pale. You talked to Nina? I talk to a lot of people, Tom. I may be busy with work, but I'm not stupid. I pulled out another stack of papers, bank statements, phone records, emails I'd recovered. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'd just sign away my children's home because you batted your eyes and mentioned taxes? The baby monitor crackled again, this time with Ethan's cry joining his sister's. Tom moved toward the stairs, but I blocked his path. Don't bother, I said coldly. I'll take care of our children. You can take care of explaining to Destiny why her new chapter is going to have a different setting than she planned. As I headed upstairs to comfort our twins, I heard Tom's phone ping. Probably Destiny, wondering why her knight in shining armor was running late for their rendezvous. Let her wonder. I had more important things to focus on, like protecting my children's future from the man who was supposed to help me build it. This isn't over, Tom called after me as I reached the top of the stairs. You're making a huge mistake. I paused, looking down at him from the landing. No, Tom. The huge mistake was thinking I wouldn't protect what's mine. I turned away from his reddening face and headed to the nursery where Emma and Ethan needed me. The next morning, I woke to find Tom gone. Probably spent the night at Destiny's. As I got the twins ready for daycare, my phone buzzed with a text from Nina. He's been to see his lawyer. Time to move fast. I'd already prepared for this. During my lunch break, I met with James Cooper, the divorce attorney Nina had recommended. His office was warm and welcoming, nothing like the stark corporate environments I'd expected. Dr. Wilson, he said, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. I have to say, I'm impressed. Most clients come to me after the fact. You've given us everything we need to get ahead of this. I had good instincts, I replied, watching as he examined the recordings. Better than good, he smiled. These recordings are clear evidence of intent to defraud. And the paper trail of his meetings with that other attorney? Well, let's just say judges don't look kindly on premeditated asset hiding. As we discussed strategy, my phone lit up with messages from Tom. We need to talk. You're being unreasonable. Think about the twins. Each message more desperate than the last. He's realizing his plan is falling apart, James observed. Be prepared. This is when they often get nasty. He was right. That evening when Tom finally came home, his nice guy facade had completely crumbled. You think you're so smart, he sneered, storming into the kitchen where I was feeding the twins their dinner. But you've just ruined everything. Destiny and I could have been reasonable about this. Let you stay in the guest house, keep things civil for the kids. I couldn't help but laugh, which only enraged him further. The guest house? In my own home? Our home, he shouted, making Emma jump in her high chair. I've lived here for 4 years. Dada mad? Ethan asked, his little face scrunching up with worry. Dada's just tired, I soothed, shooting Tom a warning look. And he's leaving for a while. Like hell I am, Tom growled, but his voice was quieter now, conscious of the twins watching. Actually, you are, I said calmly, pulling out another document from my bag. This is a temporary restraining order. My attorney filed it this morning after you threatened me via text. You have 1 hour to pack your things. You can't do this, he whispered, his face ashen. I already did. And Tom? I met his eyes steadily. Destiny's welcome to you. But this house? The one you tried to steal from your children? That's mine. And if you think I won't fight you with everything I have, you clearly never knew me at all. He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, as the reality of his situation finally sank in. The unraveling of his perfect plan was written all over his face. An hour later, I watched from the nursery window as Tom loaded his bags into his car. He kept looking back at the house, as if he still couldn't believe his plan had backfired so spectacularly. The twins played quietly with their blocks behind me, blissfully unaware that their father was leaving. Bye-bye? Emma asked, noticing me at the window. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy's going bye-bye for a while. I hugged her close, breathing in her baby shampoo scent, letting it ground me. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and hospital shifts. Tom launched a full-scale attack through his lawyer, demanding half of everything, including the house. But James was ready for him. Did you see his face when we presented the recordings in court? James asked during one of our meetings. He thought he was so clever, but he never considered you might be smarter. The evidence was damning. Not only had we proven his intent to defraud me of my premarital asset, but we'd also uncovered something even more disturbing. Tom had been embezzling from his marketing firm to fund his lavish dates with Destiny. Our forensic accountant found everything, James explained, spreading out bank statements across his desk. He's been cooking the books for months, probably to maintain the lifestyle he promised Destiny. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those times Tom had complained about living in my shadow, about feeling inferior to my success, he'd been creating his own downfall. When Tom's firm discovered the embezzlement, they pressed charges. Destiny, it turned out, had no interest in a boyfriend facing criminal charges. She dumped him via text. I know because he showed up at the house drunk one night, waving his phone and begging to come home. You did this to me, he shouted from the front yard, forcing me to call the police. You've ruined everything. As the officers led him away, I felt a strange mix of pity and relief. The man I'd married, the father of my children, had become someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe he'd been that person all along, and I'd been too busy to notice. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected. Tom, facing legal troubles with his firm, couldn't afford a lengthy court battle. He signed away any claim to the house in exchange for more favorable custody arrangements, supervised visits twice a week. You've handled this incredibly well, Nina told me over coffee, weeks after everything had settled. Most people would have fallen apart. I watched Emma and Ethan playing in my backyard, my house, my victory. I had to stay strong for them, I said. And honestly, Tom underestimating me was his biggest mistake. And Destiny? Nina asked. Any idea what happened to her? I smiled, remembering the last bit of gossip I'd heard. Apparently she's dating her real estate agent now, the one who was supposed to help her move into my house. We both laughed at the irony. Later that night, as I tucked the twins into bed, Ethan asked, Mama sad? No, baby, I said, kissing his forehead. Mama's not sad at all. And for the first time in months, I truly meant it. The aftermath of my divorce from Tom brought unexpected blessings. The biggest surprise wasn't that I could manage everything on my own. I'd always been capable of that. It was discovering how much easier life became without the constant strain of Tom's deception weighing on me. My career flourished. Without Tom's subtle undermining and passive-aggressive comments about my hours, I found renewed passion for my work. I was promoted to chief of emergency medicine, something Tom had always said would be impossible while raising twins. The twins adjusted better than I'd feared. At first, I worried about how they'd cope with the changes, but children are remarkably resilient. Their supervised visits with Tom became less frequent as his legal troubles mounted. He eventually took a plea deal for the embezzlement charges and moved to Dallas after serving his sentence. Destiny, I heard through mutual acquaintances, had moved on to another wealthy target. Sometimes I wondered if she ever realized how close she'd come to being trapped in Tom's web of lies. In a way, she'd dodged a bullet, though I doubt she saw it that way. My house, the one Tom had tried so hard to take from me, became a true haven. I renovated the twins' rooms, planted a garden, and created the home I'd always envisioned. Every mortgage payment felt like a victory, a reminder of how I'd protected what was mine. Nina teased me about dating again, but I was content focusing on my children and career. There would be time for romance later. For now, I was enjoying the peace that came with knowing I'd not only survived Tom's betrayal but emerged stronger. One quiet evening, as I sat on my porch watching Emma and Ethan play in our front yard, I reflected on how different life had become. The twins were racing around, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood, the same yard where Tom had stood that night, drunk and raging about how I'd ruined his life. I'd recently heard through the hospital grapevine that Tom and Destiny had briefly reconnected in Dallas, only to split again when she discovered he was still on probation and working as a junior copywriter at a small agency. His fall from grace had been spectacular, from marketing executive to convicted felon, from family man to cautionary tale. The irony wasn't lost on me that his desperate grab for my house had cost him everything: his career, his freedom, and most importantly, his relationship with his children. The twins now barely remembered their daily life with him. He'd become the dad they saw occasionally on weekends, always trying too hard with expensive gifts and forced enthusiasm. "Mama, look!" Emma called out, proudly showing me a cartwheel while Ethan clapped. These were the moments that mattered. Not the house, not the victory over Tom's schemes, but the simple joy of watching my children grow and thrive. A few days ago, I'd received a letter from Tom, full of apologies and regrets. I filed it away without responding. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. Instead, I focused on building new ones, strengthening my bonds with my children, my career, and most importantly, my self-respect.